Africa has always been at the center of things. So much of the flow of information that we bathe in works to downplay the centrality and the importance of Africa in the present world and in historical matters, right?
Hello and welcome to the Africa News Network.
That Africa at every stage of the so-called modern age has been a kind of fulcrum. It's been a place where important things have happened, transformational things have happened, that without Africa, and I insist on this in my title, without Africa and without Africans, nothing that we take for granted today in our lives would ever have come about along the timetable that it occurred. And so what do I mean by nothing? I mean there would be no West, and that this economic cultural space came about through the brutal catalyzing force of Africa and Africans, that it was the transmission of people in chains across the Atlantic that made the so-called settling of the West possible, that made the West economically profitable. There's a word in French that works better than profitable, that you can, even if you don't speak French, you can hear the significance. Rentable, rentable. It made the plantation spaces of the eastern seaboard of the United States viable economically. We cannot imagine the clearing of the wilderness, the kinds of stories we hear in our fables about the founding of this country, as having been possible on the timeline and on the scale that took place without the input of Africans. We cannot imagine the generation of wealth through first sugar in the West Indies and in Brazil, and then subsequently through cotton and other commodities in the United States, actually prior to cotton, things more fundamental like rice, like what people ate in this country in the founding decades of the United States. These things were all generated by Africans. And so to come back to your question and to put a fine point on it, almost everything that is important in terms of the dynamics of modern society can be traced back to these 12.5 million people who survived. That's just the survivors of the Atlantic Passage were expropriated from Africa. Their labor, billions of so-called man-hours of labor were expropriated from the African continent. And this is what made everything that we take for granted in our daily lives today, including the very existence of a West, possible.